What's your thoughts on like the whole Philion thing? You guys disagree on natty or nots a lot, I've noticed.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing with Philion. Philion thinks that anyone that's jacked is on steroids. And he thinks that so if he thinks anything
Mm-hmm.
that's jacked on steroids, he picks videos and does natty or nots on everyone who's essentially obviously on steroids or who everyone automatically is going to agree with them. So there's no risk. So it's like if I did a natty or not on the Mr. Olympia competitors in the open class,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's going to agree with me. Oh, good job, Greg. Yeah, you called out that they're, champion. Like, of course, if you take all the classic physique champs, of course. The hard part about doing a natty or not is choosing someone that doesn't even look good and saying they're not natural. That is way harder because for me, I could look like that or better with my genetics, but with their genetics, they might not even look as good as me, and I'm calling them not natural. And they're like, well, you're bigger than him and you're saying he's not natural. So what's up with that? And I'm like, well, because he doesn't have good genetics, or I can tell based on this. And there's a chance I'm wrong. I'd say 1%. Something like that. Like there's a small chance that I'm going to get it wrong, but it happens.
Because what were some of the ones? I know there was the Bumstead one you guys disagreed on.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Chris Bumstead. This is the Mr. Olympia. This is a guy with ridiculously insane genetics, and he's going to, of course, look really good as an 18-year-old without steroids. And you're like, is there any way you could look like that? And when you look at the picture, it's like, if I never knew him and it would just show me this guy and say, he's 18, what do you think? Chris Bumstead. For sure, I'd say you're on steroids. For sure. But then you show me a picture of him 6 months later on stage, and I'm like, oh my God, to make that much improvement and to admittedly say I'm on steroids for that show, and then I backtrack it and look at to where he came from, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense that he was natural because his receptors were fresh at that point, and he was able to put on that much lean muscle tissue while dieting and showing up on stage shredded looking like that. That's why I said that. And Derek, he said the same thing.
Oh, that's going to be my next question. So Derek agreed with you that Chris was natural at that point in that photo?
Yeah, exactly. We both had an opinion. It was interesting to see his opinion was the same as mine. Philion on average, he's just going to say they're not natural because it's the easy way out. And people love to hear you call them not natural. When I do a natty or nots, and I noticed from way back, if I called them natural, they got mad. If I called them enhanced, they loved it.
Right.
So you almost wanted to make videos where you said they were not natural because people they don't like it if you pick someone who's jacked and say they look natural. Like,
right.
It's like, well, why are you saying that? It doesn't make sense. You said this guy's not natty. Like I said, Jeff Seed wasn't natural. And then if I say somebody bigger than Jeff Seed is natural, they're like, well, how? That doesn't make sense. I'm like, well, it's genetics.
Yep. That was why at the beginning of our talk here, I was talking about Tristan Lee, just because in person I've seen him, and once again, Tristan, if you were watching this isn't any disrespect, but it wasn't that crazy, seeing him in person. Now I wasn't seeing him working out, training and whatnot, but I do know he is a master. Him and his brothers are master videographers and photo takers. So that's why it was always he's a very good controversial one. Him, David Lay, and Jeff Side.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Tristan's offended. I mean, to me, it would be offensive to say I think he's natural. I'd be like, why do you think I'm natural? Look at me benching 120-pound dumbbells with 4-point-some% body fat as a teenager. How do you think that's natural? How could anyone think he's natural just because he's shorter and smaller? It's still excessively impressive how much he can lift.
And I think he's doing a show here soon, if I'm not mistaken. How do you think he's going to do if he does compete?
I mean, I would assume he's going to win. He's in the junior division. He would get beat by, guys in their 20s and stuff. But in a junior division, I can't see him getting beat.
Because I think he's 18 now, 19, somewhere in that range. That guy stays in his teens somehow for 10 years.
I know. The first time I saw that kid, he was like, CJ, never go roll with ice. Ride or die, 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 ride or die. Cody's brothers, my guys, know that we fly, know that they ride or die. I keep well on my side. CJ Ike, never go ride or die.